Tonight, two men, convicted murderers who've always protested their innocence.
I never killed my wife, and I never killed my baby.
Did you kill Robert McGill?
No.
Their last hope, the Criminal Cases Review Commission. But many believe it's failing.
I think they are moribund, desk-bound, file-bound, and they're not fit for purpose.
We investigate cases the Commission has rejected.
You think Kevin Lane has been framed?
Absolutely. What more do we need to show to demonstrate that this is a miscarriage of justice?
And find evidence it overlooked.
I don't think that you can say, from anything that we've looked at today, that there was a gun in the bag. If you can't say that, it's just a bag.
Tens of thousands of people are in jail. Some will be innocent. What if it was you?
I'm on my way to meet a convicted murderer, a man who's spent almost half of his life in prison for a brutal contract killing. The problem, though, he says, is that he didn't do it. He claims to be the victim of a grave miscarriage of justice.
This is Kevin Lane. He spent 20 years behind bars. He was released in 2015 and is rebuilding his life.
Every single day, I think about this case and what it's doing to me. Every single day. It never leaves me. I'm free now. Why am I still fighting? Why am I still banging on about irregularities in the case? The difference between clearing my name and not clearing it is what he has to go through when he's older.
Kevin Lane was convicted in 1996 for a gangland hit in a quiet suburb of London 2 years earlier.
Detectives were today searching the tree-lined road where Robert McGill was gunned down early this morning.
Two men emerged from this wood here. One of them had a pump-action shotgun. McGill was shot at close range in the chest. He went to the ground in the middle of the road there. He was then shot in the head at point-blank range another 4 times. He died instantly. The two men made off into the woods. McGill was left in a pool of blood on the road.
Two men were quickly arrested, local gangsters Roger Vincent and David Smith. But ultimately, it was Kevin Lane, a boxer who'd done jail time for violence, who became the prime suspect. His palm print was found together with gunshot residue in the boot of a car linked to the killing. He faced a high-profile murder trial.
Armed police surrounded the Old Bailey and the streets were sealed off. Inside, security was just as tight.
What was it like being in the middle of that?
There was armed police all down the corridors. Very intimidating. I'm in there, going round roads the wrong way, roundabouts the wrong way. High speeds, been thrown about the van like that.
Snipers on the roof for you?
Yeah, no, they've done that to me.
Did you kill Robert McGill?
No.
Were you there?
No.
For the murder?
No.
Do you have anything to do with the murder of Robert McGill?
No.
What if he's telling the truth?
If you are unlucky enough to suffer a wrongful conviction, and although they do happen infrequently, they do happen.
No jury system's foolproof, and if it happens to you, the only route back to the Court of Appeal lies with the people in this building in the Criminal Cases Review Commission. The CCRC was set up in 1997 to investigate claims of miscarriage of justice in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Scotland has its own body. The CCRC has the power to refer cases to the Court of Appeal so they can be looked at again. The Centre for Criminal Appeals is a charity which investigates claims of wrongful convictions.
The criminal justice system is going to make mistakes. The question is, how do we identify them and how do we remedy them? If the CCRC was doing its job, this charity would not have to exist.
The CCRC has 90 staff and a budget of around £5 million annually. In recent years, numbers of people submitting claims of wrongful conviction have risen sharply to more than 1,500 a year. I'm off to meet a lawyer who submitted dozens of cases to the CCRC over the years.
They're now being overwhelmed. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that lots of people who have suffered a miscarriage of justice are not having their cases referred back to the Court of Appeal. The Commission has not lived up to its expectations.
Panorama has obtained internal board meeting minutes for the last 3 years, which reveal concerns some staff feel unable to do their jobs properly. Case review managers are struggling to cope with their workload. 24 cases per manager at any one time is typical. One senior staff member, who was a commissioner, doubted whether the work required to uncover certain miscarriages of justice was now being done. And in 2015, the minutes reveal that the Commission was worried about a culture where staff believed finding new evidence was actually seen as troublesome because of the work involved. The CCRC declined to be interviewed, but told us, "The board minutes show we share our concerns within the organisation and take them seriously. Our workload has increased in recent years and budgets have not. We've taken all the steps we can to make sure the quality of our investigations and decision-making has not been adversely affected." Convicted murderer Kevin Lane spent his 20 years in prison trying to prove his innocence. He believes he was framed by a corrupt police officer.
A fabricated case. Based on a bent police officer, exhibits being changed, material not disclosed, and it's all Spackman. And it's all documented.
7 years after helping secure Kevin Lane's conviction, former Detective Sergeant Chris Spackman was himself convicted of corruption, tampering with evidence and stealing £160,000 from his own force.
You have the police officer who's in the middle of the case, handling all the exhibits, who we now know is misbehaving both within this case and spectacularly in other aspects of his life. He was right up there. This is Premier League corruption.
Kevin Lane's lawyers say Chris Spackman misled the defence about the availability and testimony of witnesses, tampered with exhibits and protected the original suspects, Vincent and Smith, who denied the murder. Chris Spackman had 3 off-the-record meetings with Vincent before the trial, but Lane's defence were never told. He also had an informal visit with Smith.
All the inquiries that were central to the prosecution case to implicate Kevin Lane and to exculpate potentially Vincent and exculpate Smith were down to Spackman. We say Spackman was doing what he was doing to corrupt the investigation.
Vincent and Smith were later jailed for a similar gangland execution, but only after Chris Spackman had been convicted himself.
You think Kevin Lane has been framed?
Absolutely. You've got the officer in the case, and he's bent. He's corrupt, he's a criminal. He's gone to prison for dishonesty. And with the conviction of Vincent and Smith for the other murder, what more do we need to show to demonstrate that this is a miscarriage of justice?
Despite this, Kevin Lane has been turned down twice by the CCRC. 7 years into his third application, he lost patience and in 2015 went straight to the Court of Appeal. The judges accepted Chris Spackman was central to Kevin Lane's trial, but said claims the former detective had corrupted Lane's case were speculative. They rejected the appeal.
What did you say to Spackman?
You've got the information to overturn this conviction. You know how you fitted me up. I know how you fitted me up.
The CCRC interviewed Chris Spackman. He denied corrupting the case and continues to do so. I had a few questions for him though.
We're pretty sure that Chris Spackman lives just over there in that house, and we're waiting for him to emerge so that we can put our questions to him.
Mr Spackman, Mark Daly, BBC Panorama. Just got a few questions for you.
That's as much as we can show you. What happened next is I asked him if he was Chris Spackman. He said no. He claimed he had never been a police officer and repeatedly denied knowing what I was talking about. But then he went to court to prevent us from broadcasting this encounter. The BBC fought the case, but a judge ruled that as his corruption conviction is spent, his right to rehabilitate himself means we can't broadcast any pictures of him or identify where he lives. Following our meeting, Chris Bachman emailed me and said, "This case has been examined in microscopic detail by the CCRC. There was absolutely no impropriety by me." He denied having any corrupt dealings with either Smith or Vincent at any time, and said Lane's allegations are malicious. Kevin Lane's last hope of clearing his name is finding new evidence. Only then can he go back to the CCRC. Last year, it referred just 12 cases out of more than 1,500. That's less than 1% and way down on previous years. The Commission can only refer a case if there's a real possibility the Court of Appeal will quash the conviction. But one former appeal court judge thinks the bar is now set too high and has decided to speak out.
The CCRC knows that the test has changed. It's become much more difficult for an appellant to succeed. And therefore that will no doubt influence them on what cases they send through.
And the internal documents we've seen reveal the CCRC seems deeply worried about criticism by the court.
It's going to be a sort of cycle to the bottom, because the more the CCRC gets told off by the Court of Appeal for referring a case that it doesn't think it should have referred, the more cautious the CCRC is going to be about referring cases.
It is really important that the Court of Appeal Criminal Division does not set the bar too high.
You're a very high-profile former Court of Appeal judge,
yes.
And here you are saying that the test that's currently being applied at the Court of Appeal is wrong.
I'm saying that.
The CCRC said, "We do not accept the Commission appears deeply worried. Our relationship with the court is central to our role, so we are bound to carefully consider the tone and content of its judgments." Convinced he was framed by a bent cop. The Court of Appeal didn't agree, although the convictions of two other men former Detective Sergeant Chris Bachman helped to convict were overturned. The crucial difference in Lane's case, there was also forensic evidence against him. This is the actual palm print.
Yeah.
This is the palm print found on the bin bag, which really is the only evidence connecting you to this crime.
Yeah.
The print was found on a bin bag, which the prosecution said could have held the gun used in the murder. It was key to the prosecution case. We asked Louise Shorter, a miscarriage of justice specialist, to help me look at the evidence.
It's the fact that his print is found on a bag, which the expert says that the print is shaped in such a way that he could have been holding a gun, and the fact that that bag was found stuffed inside a pipe where gunshot residue was found. Gunshot residue is automatically these days a red flag if you're investigating an old case, because the way that the courts deal with gunshot residue has changed. But those pieces of evidence seem to link him to the shooting itself. So that's what we need to test.
Was the prosecution right to say that print meant Kevin Lane could have been holding a gun? I've come to meet Tracy Alexander, the lead forensic expert at City of London Police.
My absolute assertion is that you can't say how those marks were left on that, whether there was something in the bag or whether there was nothing in the bag. It's possible that there was a paintbrush in it, it's possible there was a cereal packet in it, but I don't think that you can say from anything that we've looked at today that there was a gun in the bag. If you can't say that, it's just a bag.
So the prosecution was wrong to assert the print meant Lane could have been carrying a gun. But crucially, a single particle of gunshot residue was found beside the print in the car used in the shooting. The prosecution said this meant a gun had been in the car. Was that right? Panorama asked a leading gunshot residue expert.
In this case, a gun was fired 5 times. If he did place the gun into the pipe, you would expect a very high level of GSR to be transferred into the pipe. In today's terms, there would be no evidential strength would be placed on the finding of a single particle. I certainly wouldn't have concluded that a gun had been placed within the pipe.
This is because there's more gunshot residue floating around the environment than you'd think.
Across the forensic science providers, they all have standardised approaches to reporting gunshot residue, and none of those organisations would put weight on a single particle of gunshot residue.
Now that really does feel like game-changing evidence. If you take the gun out of that vehicle, and if our other expert, Tracy Alexander, is right, and you cannot say that that bin bag had held a gun, then what exactly is the prosecution left with? Do you think the new evidence could be strong enough to get this case back to the Court of Appeal?
Yes, indeed. The importance is that her view as of by today's standards is not a change in the law, it's a development in our understanding of science. So she is now, in effect, giving us a better decision, a better judgment than would have been the case at the time. It's very big news. It's very important, it would seem to me. It would, I think, be a game changer.
The CCRC told us if they have some new information, they need to make a new application. If strong enough, we will have no hesitation whatsoever in referring the case for appeal.
I can't help feeling that in the years I've been interested in this area, it is as hard for an innocent man to get his conviction referred by the CCRC and overturned by the Court of Appeal than it has ever been. And that can't be right.
For Kevin Lane and Eddie Guilfoyle, the fight to clear their names goes on.
I'd love to be able to stand on the Court of Appeal steps and say, I told you I never done this. I told you at trial, I told you when I was convicted, and I've been telling you for 24 years now, and I've still been fighting it. It must mean something.